What's up, y'all? I'm Reese Mack.
And I'm Dr. JP.
And we are Respected Equal Perspectives. Facts.
So we're just two people from Flint who have gone through some universal things and want to talk about universal things that affect us from the aspect of healing and growing. Might not be for everybody, but for whoever it's for, you gon' do your thing.
Understand this is definitely a judgment-free zone. However, what we're giving you is what we've learned through our own experiences. And hopefully what you'll take from this will help you heal in your journey as well.
Facts.
Respect.
Ow.
Even though I made you cry, I want to make it right. Just give me some time to make it right. I go the extra mile to make you smile and just to make your day. I go out of my way and I'll do whatever it takes. Baby, won't you just stay, baby?
Baby, won't you
just stay, baby?
When I scream puss and boo,
stay with me.
stay. L-I.
Baby, won't you stay with me?
Ooh, woo, woo, wow, woo.
You know, I miss the days where people actually wanted to know what you were thinking.
Okay.
You know, it seems like today people are on the defense for everything before they even know if they should be on the defense, right? So when you're having a conversation, the communication is not effective.
Okay.
Right? We talked about in the other episode about the emotional, you using your emotions in response to something, right?
Okay.
So it's like people don't listen to understand because they're too busy listening to be offended.
So put that in context. Give me an example.
Okay. You got a husband and wife.
Okay.
Right? And let's say you are going to have an important meeting on Monday. Mm-hmm. So on Thursday, you say, baby, do me a favor and put my suit in the cleaners because I have this big meeting on Monday that may lead to a promotion. Mm-hmm. And she says, no worry. I got you, baby. I got you. Okay. Right? So Thursday goes by, Friday goes by, Saturday goes by, and on Sunday morning, as you're, getting your mind ready for this meeting, she tells you, baby, I forgot to put your suit in the cleaners. But the other one looks just as good.
Okay.
And now you're upset. So you're explaining to her how this big meeting can lead to more opportunities for you work-wise, and you needed her to do that for you, and she didn't. And instead of her saying, I'm sorry, she goes crying and she goes, well, I do everything else right for you.
But
I'm always there for you. I just messed up this one time.
Oh, okay.
Right?
All right.
Now you're explaining how this just threw off everything you needed for this meeting. And the only thing she heard was, you messed up.
Okay. So, is that more listening to be offended or listening to deflect? And the reason why I say that is because I got to give my wife credit. I do, because my wife has, she has done, she has grown tremendously. You know what I mean? To the point to where in the beginning, if it was something that she was supposed to be accountable for, right, and she wasn't accountable or didn't hold herself accountable, I would be the one holding her accountable. But in the process of doing so, instead of her receiving it and just taking the L, she would automatically just start crying. So it wasn't that she was listening to be offended, she was listening to deflect. Because in her deflecting, then there's not no room, rhyme, or reason for her to take accountability. Because then I'm going to digress from that and then start concentrating on her emotional state. But I had to check myself because am I listening to hear or am I listening to be offended? Because if I'm reacting to her emotions all the time, it'll get to a point, or excuse me, let me clear that up. If we're talking about something, right, and she automatically starts crying or gets emotional midway or in the beginning of the conversation, what's going to happen is I'm going to say, well, you know what? See, every time I'm sitting up here trying to talk to you, you got to sit up there and you got to get emotional. Why you always crying? So then I'm listening to be offended because I'm reacting to the emotions instead of deflecting in a positive way.
I disagree. I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
I disagree that it's listening to be deflective because you wouldn't know that you needed to be deflective if you didn't feel like you were offended by what was said.
Okay, go. You got to go deeper with that one.
Okay.
You got to go deeper with that one.
So,
got to.
In order for it to be necessary for me to deflect from what you're saying, I have to deem that there was something wrong on my part to begin with.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Because if there's nothing wrong, I don't need to deflect anything because I didn't do anything.
Facts.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So when I've done something, there would not be a need to deflect if I had not already be offended. So the deflection comes after the offensiveness.
So if I react to the deflection, like I said, am I doing the same thing? Because remember what I said, at first I was reacting to the deflection, but then I said, you know what? Instead of me reacting to this deflection, when she says, you know what, I don't know, I'm just sitting up here crying. I know you hate it when I cry. The minute I go, no, that's all right. I know you don't like. I know you're not emotional, which I always hated that statement. It's not that I'm not emotional or that I'm not emotional. I do have feelings. I am alive, and my feelings can be hurt. I just don't use emotions to be the premise for how I function. So the minute I start going, no, you know what? It's cool. You and I, two different people. It removes the deflection to get back to the point of, okay, so now you gotta hear me. And then that's when, in hearing me, it went from the crying to now you being upset and you got a response after everything that I say. An immediate response. So you're not even hearing the offensiveness, or not offensiveness, being offended is coming in the form of that type of reaction. So it's a different type of deflection because I got an immediate answer. So then we're not even talking in circles. We're not even really talking at all.
Let me ask this question.
Okay.
When she did this and you had your reaction to that, was it non-factual?
What do you mean? No.
Okay.
My reaction is non-factual?
Let me say it like this. You said once you would do that, you used to be like, well, man, here you go again. What you doing with this crying stuff? That was your reaction, right? And you said, were you listening to be offended? And my answer is the question of, in your response to that reaction she gave, were you non-factual?
No.
Or were you telling the truth?
Yeah.
Every time I bring something to your attention that you've done, instead of owning it, you revert to crying. That's not you
true.
Being offended. That's you stating the fact of what happens with the experiences in which y'all have had. So no, you're not listening to be offended because you haven't heard anything. What you've seen is the same reaction every single time that there was a problem, and you recognized it to check it in immediately.
Good point.
And it drew or it created more emotions for her.
But in dealing with fact, if what I'm recognizing as fact, if what I'm saying is a factual statement, does my emotional content take away from the fact? And I say that as from the statement, the truth is the truth, right? But even still, it's all within presentation. You can be telling or saying something that's the absolute truth, but your presentation of it will be two different ball games. So if what I'm saying is fact, do I have to have emotional content behind it? Because what I'm saying is fact. It's the truth. So why do I need the emotional content? That's what I had to discover for myself.
Okay, so the question I have for that is removing the emotional factor. Mm-hmm. The facts remain the same, right? Mm-hmm. Does the reaction remain the same, right? Because if it is, I tell you what you did, right? Mm-hmm. And you respond with the emotional behavior, mm-hmm. right? And I go in a calm state. Every time I bring something to your attention, you're crying. Does it stop the crying or does the crying persist? Because if that's the case, then your emotion didn't take away from it or give to it.
So either way, it's still going to be the same ball game.
Exactly.
Whether I'm 10
so it didn't make a difference. Yeah. Right.
I get that. So when we say listening to be offended versus listening to hear, with the whole fact of
listening to understand.
Oh, excuse me. You're right. Listening to understand rather versus listening to be offended. If you're listening to be offended, is that the premise for not taking accountability?
Yes.
And to add on to that, not taking accountability, but then listening to be offended because you really don't want a resolution.
Yes, because the resolution would mean a change has to occur in you, right?
So,
for any of us, that change is not an easy thing. Sometimes it hurts like hell, right?
So no, to the point of listening to understand rather than listening to be offended. You know, me and you've been talking about this. We've been talking about this for some time. Because remember, it was over a year ago. I was like, you know what? I'm going to be me, I'm going to be still, and I'm going to be focused. So in being me, being still, and being focused, I don't have to be upset to where there's a change in my tone or I got all these different vocal inflections. I don't have to do any of that. Why? Okay. Because my wife said, you know, every time we get into an argument, she was like, you know, it's just, you cussing, you know what I'm saying, you raising your voice, you yelling, and I would appreciate if you wouldn't do that. So remember, I had a conversation with you, and I said, you know what? It ain't no reason for me to be upset no more. No reason for me to be upset. So whenever I have to deal with any type of conflict or any type of dialogue that's not necessarily positive, I'm going to be cool, calm, and collective. So what I noticed is I changed my behavior because I was listening to hear or listening to understand versus listening to be offended because I took what she said to heart. So I said, you know what? I'm going to give her what she wants.
Not only did you take what she said to heart, you made a conscious effort to remove the excuses.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that now everything that is at the table is rooted completely in fact with no emotion whatsoever, and she can no longer deflect because there's no barrier to deflect upon.
Yes.
Right?
So, all right, so remember this situation.
Okay.
Situation was, I don't remember what was going on, but we were going to do a barbecue, right? Remember, we were going to do a barbecue. Mm-hmm. And she said, yeah, well, you know, my sister said she was going to come, but she not going to come unless she can bring the dog. So I was like, okay. Because anybody who know me know, people who are dog lovers, more power to you. But me personally, I don't believe that you can have a clean house or I can have the clean house the way I want it to be clean with a dog in the house. So my point of view was, if there is no dog living in this house, why, on a visitation basis, would I want this dog in my house? I don't care who dog it is. So calmly, remember I told you about this. So calmly I said, yeah, I'm not feeling the whole dog thing. You know, we don't have a dog. You know, we've already had that conversation. We had a dog at one point. The dog's not here anymore. So that should be stone cold fact of why there don't need to be a dog in the house, right? So automatically she escalated. I just think that's stupid. The dog only gonna be over here for a minute, blah, 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 like going through it. So I'm sitting there looking at her, and I said, well, what I'm trying to understand is I'm talking to you, I'm speaking to you in a cool, calm, collective manner. And you sitting up here going, 0 to 10. I mean, I understand that, yeah, but at the same time, lower your voice. And then I said, because I remember a dialogue that we had to where you said you didn't like X, Y, and Z. I changed X, Y, and Z, so it was okay for me to change my behavior while your behavior stayed the same. So was it really me that was the problem? Or that was your way of deflecting, and once I removed the deflection, you were still on that Chris Brown 3 in the morning, bull ruckus for dangle shadanga-like. You see what I'm saying? So I changed the behavior. So I was listening to understand versus listening to be offended. But in my calm nature, in changing the behavior and executing that, you were still listening
it exposed hers even heavier.
Right. So where do we go from there? Now, the behavior was definitely corrected on her end. I'm just saying, where do we go from there?
I get what you're saying, right? And I think somehow we have gotten lost in effective communication being someone gets what they want, right? We have gotten away from the stature that I can feel how I feel, you can feel how you feel, and we still meet a common ground that we're both okay with, right?
Something mutually acceptable.
Right.
Okay.
Now, if you come to me and you ask me a question like, is it okay for my sister to bring her dog here? And I tell you no, that was an answer you should have already been prepared, because it can go one way or the other. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But we've gotten into this state of let me say this. I hate the term happy wife, happy life.
Okay, why? Why do you hate that term?
I hate the term because it gives the impression that only the wife should be happy.
And go further, that means that's also insinuating that you got to do everything
to make that person happy.
Or there's a give. There's a give. No, there's not a. Yeah, there's a give and there's a take, but it's more consistent from the man giving and the woman taking instead of the roles being reversed.
It's not a reciprocative relationship. Right. And what it does is it sets up a standard for problems later on, I think, because number one, I believe no person can make someone happy. That's not their job. Right? We all have our own paths. So my job doesn't include you and what you're going through. My path, my purpose, you're along this path, but you're not that purpose.
But let's go back though, because you said something. You said something that hit me, and it was a bar.
Okay.
And I don't even think you caught it. When you brought up that statement of, you asked me a question, can a dog come over? Can a dog be in the house? It could either go one way, yes, or it can go no. But you already had in your mind how you wanted it to go. So you weren't really asking me the question to really truly get an answer. You were asking me to get the answer that you want. So when you didn't get the answer that you wanted, oh, you was listening to hear, but got offended based off the actual answer that I gave.
And I think you did that under the guise that your asking would be looked at as being compromising.
Right. It was a disguise. Like, I'm going to ask you this. Like, and we've been
I'm going to ask you this. I know where I want you to answer, but I got to come off as asking you. I can't just make a decision because that's going to bring in more trouble.
Right.
So
right.
I'm not asking you prepared or really wanting you to give an answer one way or the other.
Yeah.
I want you to give me the answer I want.
Right. It was already a preconceived notion.
And that there is a selfishness, right? And we all have it sometimes unknowingly, right? We do. Mm-hmm. If you come home and you knew all day long you've been thinking about fettuccine Alfredo, right? Mm-hmm. You come in the house and you go, babe, can you make me some fettuccine Alfredo? Mm-hmm. She say, no, you're not going to be happy because all day long you've been thinking about that fettuccine Alfredo. And you just knew she was going to say yes.
Right.
Right?
Right. The
expectation. But it looked as if you were being considerate by asking. Right? And that's not what it's doing. It's an unknowingly thing. We are all at points and times in our lives unknowingly selfish. Right? And it's not
knowingly or unknowingly?
Unknowingly selfish.
I'm gonna let you finish that point. Okay.
And it's not with ill intent, right? It's not meant with the intent to deceive, right?
Okay.
It's done with the comfort we've become with the situation, right? Right?
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So if at the beginning of us dating, right?
Yeah.
I'm in the kitchen and I'm making you Alfredo and I'm doing this and doing that and doing this and doing that. But now, let's say I'm a teacher and school's back in session. So I can't be in here making you all this because you got to go to work because guess what? Baby, I got to go to work too.
Right.
So can I come home to a meal? You know what I'm saying? So you're not always going to get your way, but because I set you up at the beginning, giving you everything you wanted without creating the boundaries that at times I may not want to, or at times I'm going to say no, it would be no reason for you to be disappointed when you get that answer that was a possibility before you asked the question.
Right, but in that aspect, wouldn't that person be knowingly selfish? And the reason why I say that is because if you know school is about to start, you know, he or she has to do lesson plans. They got to do all these different things. You know, in the summertime, a teacher's not working. They go back to work. You know, their schedule is going to be real. They're going to be working over 40 hours a week because whatever they're doing doesn't stop when the bell rings, you know, at the end of the day, and doesn't start when the bell rings to get everything popped off. So you know that's the circumstance. So if you know that's the circumstance, how would that be unknowingly selfish when you know what the circumstances? So let's tie it to this. So if we say listening to understand versus listening to be offended, is listening to be offended based off being knowingly selfish with your expectation? That makes sense?
It does. It makes sense.
Because you're only consumed with what you want, not something that's mutually acceptable.
I guess maybe I'm using the wrong word, unknowingly, as I want to use unaware.
Even still,
so I'm gonna say this because
I get you.
You get what I'm saying?
I get you.
You can go through a day without consideration to someone else. Right?
Right. I get that.
Without it being an intentional, let me go through this day and I'm not going to worry about what anybody else got going on. Right. That's not what you're doing. You're just going through the day and you ain't thinking about nobody else, what you got going on. Right.
Because it's you.
Because it's you.
I get that.
Right.
Okay.
So with it being that case, you can still be unknowingly selfish when you want something your way because today all you thought about what you had going on. Maybe you didn't think about what her day consisted of. And it doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you human. Right?
Okay.
You got to give room and grace for no one is going to always do things the way you want think they should do.
Right, that's what diversity
That
is.
will never be the case.
Right.
In a perfect world, and if it is, at some point that person will get tired of giving you everything you want, and they're going to find someone to give them what they think they need.
So now let's switch gears. So you and I, we were having this conversation, and we were talking about, people listening to understand versus people listening to be offended. So Bill Burr was on Saturday Night Live, right? So, and this is going back to what you said about with me and my wife. Yeah, what you were saying was fact. So even though what you were saying was fact, they were deflecting. My wife was deflecting off the basis of not wanting to take accountability, to not want to be held accountable by me. So Bill Burr's Saturday Night Live monologue was based off of white women's position, right? White women's position in saying, just basically everything concerning the cancel culture. You know what I'm saying? And so if you did something wrong, this, and this, blah, blah, blah. But the point that he made was, well, when white men was doing whatever they were doing, committing all these atrocities, these social injustices and all these different things, y'all stood off to the side and y'all reaped the benefits. Because I remember when affirmative action dropped, right?
Okay.
Remember, that was in the 90s.
Yes, it was.
Right? So the basis of affirmative action was to benefit women and minorities.
Okay.
Women totally forgot at that time. Women totally forgot that they were even included in it, and to start just focusing on the minority portion of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So everything that Bill Burr was saying, it could be perceived as opinion, but it was very factual. And they got offended because they weren't trying to pull out the truth of it. You know what I mean? Or they weren't even listening to the truth. They were just picking what they wanted to talk about.
Ooh.
So, for example, right? If I have a conversation with somebody that's not from my cultural background, right?
Okay.
And I sit there and I say to them, well, if we look at everything right now, in today's time, you have more black people today that are educated more so than times in the past. And the bulk of the people that are educated are black women. Okay?
Yes.
So then if I say, all right, well, let's talk about Brown versus Board of Education. Let's talk about Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. They say, well, you know what? Today's time, black people got an equal chance just like everybody else do. But then my point to that would be, all right, well, cool. If that's true, then there would be no such thing as cases going to the EEOC, discrimination cases. You know what I mean? Pay wage. There was something that just popped off in Nike, and it was all women, to where women were paid much less than what men were getting paid. Also,
that's been an argument also in women's sports, right?
Right. Also, and that's a different ball game. That's a different ball game.
That's a different ball game, but it's along the same lines.
Well, no, it's a different ball game based off market.
Now, I would agree.
Based off market,
I would agree, but we're going to digress for that.
Yeah, we're gonna stay on point with it. So I say all that to say, when you have a conversation with someone talking about the atrocities committed against black people, right? They always find a way to get offended to the point of saying, oh, well, there's black on black crime. Or what about, what about the fact that you got people, selling drugs, or you got more black people in prison than anybody else. So they're not listening to hear, they're listening to be offended, because then they take it personally. So the question is,
personal attack.
As a personal attack when you speak in facts. Because the biggest one was, oh, the Black Panther Party, they were so evil. Well, hold on. Where did you get this information from?
Right. What's the question?
The question is, what you mean? What's the question?
You said the question is, and then you didn't finish it.
Right. So the question is when we break it down, we're tying all this together as to say, is the listening to be offended off the basis of not taking accountability, being consciously selfish, and not wanting a resolution?
Yes. Huh. That one is easy.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, let me say it like this, right? We dropping some history facts, right?
Okay.
We are a country that...
Okay, first of all, you say we are a country.
Let me just say this.
I ain't
in
we.
this country,
okay,
right?
All right.
In this country's history,
mm-hmm.
as a country,
mm-hmm.
the United States does not ever want to focus on the atrocities they put upon other people, but the ones that have been done to the United States become big, bold focus and focal points for political advertising, campaign, and things of that nature. Right? Think about it. How many times have we bombed countries?
Stop saying we, because you didn't do that.
How many times did this country bomb other countries, killing innocent people on their land off the basis of helping someone else or another country or another ally?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? But when 9/11 happened, when 9/11 popped off, and we were in college when that happened,
man,
I woke up to watching this opening my eyes to watching these planes into a building.
So I got a story for that one.
Right? But when 9/11 happened, ever since 9/11 happened, every year, don't forget 9/11, right? Every year, don't forget 9/11. But we don't want to remember when we went and bombed this place, this place, this place. We don't have any remembrance of those that we took out that became a casualty of a war they had nothing to do with. Right? So I'm saying that to say the history of this country is that the country has always placed blame in other laps without taking accountability. What it has done since it's created that same kind of entitlement in the people in this country, right? And they've done it in a way to say what we've done, and I'm saying this and them saying what we've done, let's just forget about it. Right? We're going to put that under the rug. Out of sight, out of mind, it didn't happen.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But what you did is going to be on the table as a focal point.
So then let's tie that.
So then it created, and then the people now have this thing of what happened in the past, that's old news. But what you did to me here, it counts. Right?
Yeah, so tie that into relationships.
Wait, I want to tie into the Bill Burr thing, right?
Okay.
So with the Bill Burr thing, the issue was you had a bunch of people who heard their race and their gender.
Okay.
Right? And said, oh, he's attacking women, right? Because the premise is you can't bring up women or a race, right, with an issue and point out the truths, right?
Yeah.
Because they've been through so many ugly things.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah. Okay? So, because women have endured so much since the beginning of this country, the takeover of this country, after the indigenous, right? Since they went through so much with the not having the right to vote, and them having to fight for that, still fighting for getting equal wages. Some of them, they had been raped with no consequence whatsoever because they had been groomed to think that they were put here,
generation of strongholds,
as strongholds, as bonus or pleasure at the expense of being the pleasure for men, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't count what you want, what you need, what you feel don't count because you're here to serve men. So now when people like Bill Burr brings up women, or when you hear a comedian who brings up women, there's a cancel because their thoughts is, well, they've endured enough, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying we haven't as women in this country. We endured a lot. But we've endured a lot for being black.
Facts.
Right?
Right.
Now, you've endured a lot for being a black man.
Right.
And I've endured a lot for being a black woman.
I agree.
Correct?
I agree.
So that here has no weight on the presence of what you're doing now. Because you can't change what has happened.
Okay. So now let's say this. So it wasn't so much that it was said, it was because somebody that looked like them was saying it.
Right.
So, hold on. So, now let's tie that back to a relationship. If we tie that back to a relationship and saying listening to understand versus listening to being offended, since it's coming from the other person
partner
who is closest to
that
them,
person.
Right. Is it fair to say it's more likely to go that way anyway? Because what that person's connection is to you.
To go what way? It's more likely to go what way?
A way of them being offended because they're the closest thing to you.
No. Because I think that depends on the connection, right? And the line of communication these two partners have, right? So if we best friends and we talk about everything, right? Mm-hmm. And we both working for the betterment of this partnership, right? When I bring an issue to you, most times you're going to listen to what I have to say, right? Mm-hmm. Because we already talk every day. Mm-hmm. So if I'm coming to you in this conversation, a way to say, hey, this kind of bothered me today, and I'm saying it to you in a way that removes the emotion so it makes you think about just the situation, you have no choice but to address it in the same manner.
That's not true, though. And the reason why it's not true, because it happens all the time to where you bring an issue, and instead of them taking it in, they go, well, you just did that yesterday, but that's not what we're dealing with right now. If it was an issue for you, then you should have communicated it to me.
You missed what I said. I said when you have two individuals who have effectively communicated and building this partnership, right? So the missing component is the communication factors. If someone is saying in a calm manner, what happened today put me in a bind, in a pressure because you knew I needed this suit. You just kind of let me down, right? Mm-hmm. And the response is a jump off, right? This is a response that has happened more than once. Mm-hmm. This ain't the first time this is happening. Mm-hmm. It hasn't been all calm and all of a sudden, here come this jump off response of emotion. But what about this and what? No, because y'all have already established that your line and the way in which you communicate is effective enough so y'all both can understand it, right? Even though you may not agree with it. Yeah. The only time it gets all pop-offish is because there has been times in the past that this person has handled that reaction the exact same way. So it's a pattern.
I disagree.
It's not brand new.
I disagree.
Okay.
And the reason why I disagree is because even when you have two people in a relationship to where there is effective communication, right? Okay. Things ain't on point all the time. Everybody gonna have their days.
I didn't say all the time.
Right, but I'm just saying, but that's the other part we gotta look at. If you're saying effective communication, how did it get to a point, if it started off and everything was all good and they just had effective communication from jump, cool.
No,
if it was built. Something, right, it's built. But even when it's built, we all have our days. And that's the day that will support what you were saying as far as being unaware of your selfishness.
Here's the thing, though. What you're saying is not something that would happen often for two people who have figured out how to effectively communicate.
Yeah.
It may be once in a while. And that's where grace comes in, right? Because with growth has to come a level of grace and understanding, right? Mm-hmm. That we're not perfect, that we're going to fall short of some of the goals in which we set. Right? Or the expectation which was laid. that's going to happen regardless.
But there's
so
not,
that situation or instance is not a common one.
Well,
right?
It is though. It is.
That's not what I'm saying. You're missing it.
I'm not missing it.
Let me say it like this.
This is what I'm trying to say. No, it's not common. But what I'm saying is, the moment it does happen, it has the ability, based off the context and based off the emotions in that situation, it has the ability to destroy what was built.
I disagree. Okay. I don't think it has the ability to destroy everything that was built in that one situation. The only way that happens is both these individuals are now emotional and they shooting out words that they can't take back.
It's an escalated conflict.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
So
that happens.
But then you have two individuals hopefully would be grown up to be able to stop themselves when they go overboard and say something they can't walk back. Because as we know, words have power, right? Once they're out there, they're out there.
They do.
So if we have a disagreement, before we get to a point of shooting daggers and throwing names, we done talking. I'm ending that conversation because we're not going to get anywhere and it's going to get worse. So it will never get to a point if what we have, for the most part, on most days, if we have a decent relationship for the most part, there is no way in the world you or I are going to allow one moment, one night to get so bad that we can't walk ourselves back to common ground to where we've been operating.
And I'm
not saying we don't make mistakes.
Right.
And I'm not saying that we're going to always listen to understand. There's going to be days and times that we might be a little bit more vulnerable depending on what has happened or what we've been through or whatever the case, what time of year it may be, if we lost a parent, whatever the case may be, there's going to be moments where our feelings try to address the problems. It just doesn't need to happen often. And it doesn't need to happen to the detriment of an ending of something, right? And even then, hopefully, once things calm down, I might come to you and say, baby, well, we got really mad today. We went off on each other. Yeah, we did, baby. I'm sorry. Baby, I'm sorry. We weren't trying. I understand what you were saying. I was just having a bad day, and yeah, I messed up. I should have took your suit to that day you asked me, but I forgot. That was my apologies. I'm trying to be better on my job. And your response would be equal to what I am so we can come back to common ground. That's that whole effective communicating thing, right? Because if you're really listening to understand, you would hear the point in which y'all need to take a break because you can't go no further before you start crossing lines.
Right. So my point is, like, for example, coming from the perspective of somebody being married, yeah, all that sound well and good. And yeah, that is a point to where you build to. But even in building to that point, there are points and times to where a lapse happens.
Yes.
And that lapse can be damaging to the point to where when you say, okay, we'll get back to that point to where effective communication was present, that can take a whole lot more time than I think you're making reference to. Why? And I'm saying that from the point of, in a relationship, it's not designed for everything to be all good. It's not designed for everything to be all bad.
Okay.
So I'll give you what my perspective on what marriage is, right?
Okay.
My perspective on marriage is, it is the best and worst decision that I've ever made in my life. Okay. It is the best and the worst. The reason why it's the best is because of the growth. Why? Because remember, I told you, I wouldn't have went to graduate school, had I not been who I was with. Because based off certain things that was happening, it instilled this drive, a deeper sense of drive and determination in me, right? But it's also the worst because, man, there'd be some times, man, I want to put her head through a wall because of the effective communication or even lack thereof, because of the compromise or because of the, hey, it's your turn to be selfish or it's my turn to be selfish. But what you're being selfish on is something that I don't even understand because we're two different people.
And I want to say this because I'm not a married individual.
Right.
But what it sounds like to me is that not marriage is the best and worst decision. This particular marriage, because as you stated, had you not been with this person, you would not have pursued your master's or your doctorate. Had you had a different type of woman, you may not have done those things. I know many folks who are, who are married, and that marriage doesn't drive them to be better. Right?
Okay.
Depending on what the basis of that is.
Okay.
So your marriage may be the best and worst decision for you.
But that's what
because
I said.
of who it is. You said I'm gonna tell you my definition of a marriage.
I said mine.
Your marriage. Okay.
But
okay.
I made that clear.
I get
but
that.
But guess what though? There are many other men who are married who I said that same thing to, and
you know what? And y'all probably are absolutely correct.
They said,
however, let me ask you this: in those many of men, how many of them have come to a full circle of growth like you have?
But I haven't come to a full circle. I haven't come to because I'm
okay. You're still working it, but you started on the path.
Right.
How many of those men have started on the path? And I'm not saying that any of them have or have not. I'm just saying you have to consider what they started and what they're doing with themselves in that aspect of that statement, because I think it differs from marriage to marriage, right?
Okay, and then for me to answer that question pretty much goes into our next episode for me to truly answer that question. So, you want to go ahead and wrap this up?
Yeah, we're going to have to pick this up on the next one because this is getting good. Let's
go ahead and wrap this up. Let's go ahead and wrap it up. Let's close it out. Who you be?
I'm Reese Mack.
I'm Dr. JB.
And we are
Respected Equal Perspectives.
Peace.
I was made to be. This was made for me. You can't kill the soul of a warrior. No one said it would be easier, that they pray on my phone. I'll never let you beat me. I'm still standing tall. A warrior. No one said it would be easier, that they pray on my phone. I'll never let you beat me. I'm still standing.